you don't need to limit yourself to just the city where you're based. You know, you can do a lot overseas as well. And attract new opportunities.
We are not taught about money a lot, right? All we are taught about money in terms of money is like save and try and get a good job. And I'm sure it must have been a different kind of like advice and things from your parents.
And everybody wants to make their own footprint and do things their own way. And especially as a young, energetic man, you want to kind of push the boundaries and make your own impact. So that was one of the things which gradually I kind of understood my skills, my techniques, how best to kind of fine tune that are more kind of beneficial for myself. Being your own boss, you have a certain degree of liberty in terms of you can start your day whenever you see fit. You can finish whenever you also feel enough is enough for the day. And it's a case of doing the marketing trip, as most people tend to do. So I took the family to the world of Astoria, then we were visiting Atlantis, doing a lot of the sightseeing kind of excursions.
Kind of selling the...
Just to drop a seed in the ocean.
Yeah. When you went to that school event, right? And then when that new friend of yours called you and said, meet me at Capital Club, you didn't know what Capital Club was at that time, right?
True.
So for the audience who are listening, and some of them who don't know what Capital Club is, can you just explain in brief what it is, what does it do, who does it benefit, and who should join?
So Capital Club is the oldest private business members club in Dubai, operating for over 15 years. We have 1,200 members, and it's really a wide mix of banks, law firms, private equity, VCs, family offices, and that's, the tip of the iceberg. So many people from different industries and sectors.
Yeah.
A lot of entrepreneurs, C-suite executives, ministers, ambassadors, consul generals, and then a lot of the household names in terms of major conglomerates you see across the region as well.
In a way, it looks like maybe Capital Club, I may be wrong here, but Capital Club is not for everyone, because it's like, for high net worth, and it's high entry point, right? In a way, who is it for then? Like for someone who's starting a business, and maybe Capital Club may not be the right place for them yet, right? Or is it?
So we have a lot of entrepreneurs who are also members.
Okay.
We also have a lot of young executives as well. There is obviously a process involved in terms of approval, going through the board of directors, etc., just to make sure it's kind of the right fit in terms of the prospective member, and that it's well aligned in terms of the club as well. But we have people from all different walks of life. A lot of people who are, very successful, achieved a lot of wealth overseas, and now they're moving new to Dubai. And then obviously they just want to make sure they make the right decisions, who they wish to work with.
Yeah.
Who they trust, who they find, they have common grounds with.
Yeah.
Also, to be able to discuss that in a private setting, discretion is so important, especially when you're talking about your own personal information, whether it be business or otherwise.
Yeah.
So it's kind of all of those aspects. And then when it comes through by recommendation or introduction as well, then obviously it holds a little bit more weight as well.
What are some of those like eligibility criterias, for example, to enter the club?
So eligibility comes partly down to the background, in terms of the level of position that you hold. These are some of the factors that are taken into consideration. And then obviously if you're recommended by an existing member, that's also something that's taken into consideration. So all these factors are kind of important. But each case is different in many respects. It's just making sure that there could be alignment. Again, it's very much an ideal place in terms of informal networking. Again, the approach is always very important in terms of not to make other members feel uncomfortable, to respect each other's privacy, but very much an active community. Because there are so many events, both on the business and social side, that kind of foster that ability to develop such relationships.
Yeah. And as a sales director, your role is to, I believe, to grow the club in a way, right? And that's or what's the key responsibilities? What do you?
So it's very much important to make sure that anybody new looking to join the club is the right fit. And yes, we're still growing the member base as things currently stand. It's just making sure that everything's kind of correctly aligned, the right type of caliber of people, that there could be potential synergy, that is also potentially beneficial for them. So that's really very, very important. And it's partly in terms of developing the culture within the club as well. People need to feel comfortable in terms of the environment. They need to understand where best they can kind of entertain, where best they can kind of dine, all these different aspects, how best to kind of feel settled and part of the club.
So physically the location is in DIFC, right? You're based in DIFC. And so do all your meetings and stuff like that happen there, or do you like go out in other places and you have gatherings and social gatherings?
Very rarely. We have the odd event, whether it be the yacht parties, etc., that are kind of outside of the club, but the vast majority are within.
Okay.
However, the one thing which a lot of our members really, really tend to enjoy is when they're traveling.
Yeah.
In a lot of the major cities, we have reciprocal partners or reciprocal clubs. So our members, if they're in London, Paris, Singapore, Hong Kong, they can utilize each of these clubs for a certain number of visits.
Yeah.
So it means when they've got external meetings overseas, they can also still invite their clients. They've kind of got their home away from home or their office away from their office in different countries as well.
That's so valuable, right? That's so important because as a business, you're here, but then if you're in London, you don't have anything, and if you have the club there, that's really then beneficial because
and I think these things make a big difference, especially when you're dealing with high level clients, whatever it may be. It's about setting the right impression, and taking the meeting in a serviced office or in a hotel lobby. It's very different to inviting them to your private club or a connected private club within the network. It kind of already sets that level of decorum that, things can hopefully move in the right direction.
Yeah. So for the members who are there in the club, I mean, there again, if we look at those members, okay, we like you mentioned about the inbound networking and the outbound networking, right? They must be dealing with both kinds of networking, right? There must be a lot of members who are approached by other members to for their benefits, and then the other way around as well.
Yeah, so it's a two-way process always. There are always people who are kind of looking for very, very specific requirements.
Yeah.
And then on the other side, people who are being approached. So again, you see both sides of the coin in terms of how best to network, and it's sometimes good just to sit back and watch how people do it on an informal basis. I guess for me, it's kind of a vast majority of my time in terms of understanding the different dynamics, person by person. But it's very much kind of an undervalued kind of art form in its own way, I feel.
Networking.
It's so important in today's world. Because, there are so many different tools out there in terms of social media. However, that's all without any kind of physical or connection or interaction beyond a screen, effectively.
Absolutely, and this is one of the reasons why I was like so eager that we should have this conversation, because the art of networking, like you've put it, I think this is something all entrepreneurs must learn. And tell us about it. What are some of those common mistakes that people do when it comes to networking?
Well, I think during the COVID period, everything went virtual. It was all Zoom calls and similar types of ways in terms of communication, because there was no other option effectively. And I think people really missed that one-on-one physical engagement, because at the end of the day, how do you read somebody's persona, their personality? How do you kind of really kind of break the ice? It's very hard to do when it's done over the internet or digitally. When you're in front of somebody, you can immediately develop different levels of rapport just by gauging their body language and small different aspects. It's far easier to kind of get a full kind of overall bird's eye view of the situation face to face. And this is something which I think is super critical in today's age. And when people do meet in person, right? Like people go to a networking event. What are some of those really stupid things that you've seen that people do, and it's like you wish you could tell them, no, that's not how it's done? What are some of those common mistakes people do in person networking event? I wouldn't say it's always the case, but often you tend to find, whether it be that people get a little bit nervous of their surroundings or other people being around, but often you tend to find people jump straight into I do A, B, C, D, E in terms of their own products, their own services, what's their core business, rather than, take the time to listen on both sides. Any conversation is a two-way approach. And, by actually allowing for the other person to speak, you can slowly find the right times to bring those certain aspects into conversation in a more kind of natural way. So I think that's kind of one of the most important things that I see often. Still, I find within the club, because it's so much focused on networking, is very different to external events. When you tend to go to some of these external events, you see people with a stack of business cards and just distributing them. It's like a lottery as to whether they're going to meet the right person or not. But I tend to find, especially people who have been in the club for a number of years, they have developed that skill step by step as to how best to kind of gauge each and every person on their own merits, and whether it might be more just in terms of friendship, or whether they see that there could be a possibility of business, or whether they see an immediate opportunity. And often what you tend to find is just by, in a friendly manner, developing that rapport with somebody else, there's always a possibility for third-party networking, that they may have their own network that they can open up an opportunity to that will be beneficial on both different sides. So it's just a case of always keeping an open mind, but I think rushing doesn't necessarily help.
Like it happened in your case when you met this gentleman and he introduced you to the son of the founder of Enoch. So exactly, that was a third-party network.
True, and I think that also comes down to what I saw most, or equally as importantly on that side, is a lot of that comes down to credibility, because nobody would be comfortable to open up their own inner circle of network if they didn't feel comfortable. If they didn't trust that what you deliver could also be of benefit to the other party. So that's where I kind of started to see the importance of not just having the network, but also making sure that the network can, in theory, be a win-win situation for both sides. Because, you just got to kind of gauge each situation for itself. A lot of the high-profile people here in Dubai, everybody would like to meet for different reasons. But it's also about valuing their time and making sure that when you introduce somebody, is potentially going to be something that they'll appreciate.
Exactly, because when someone introducing someone, it's like they're putting their reputation at stake. So I really want to go back to that conversation, that the incident that you mentioned about when you met this gentleman at a school event, and then the next day when he invited you to the Capital Club, and he introduced you to the important person there for you, right? Now, definitely, what happened in that conversation and that dinner conversation at the school event is a business lesson in itself. And I would like to tap on that really and understand what kind of conversation was it? Because if we think about it, that person had just met you once. He just had dinner with you once. Next day, he calls you and he puts his reputation at stake. I mean, he's willing to take that risk. Says he knows that Dave Chaggar is...
It's kind of an endorsement in a way from one time meeting somebody.
Exactly.
Which I was also quite surprised by. But I guess, I didn't go into the conversation with any expectation. It was just a case of enjoying the dinner. Obviously, it was a nice fine dining restaurant. So just to enjoy the ambience, get to meet more people, being new to Dubai. So the conversation was a very free flow. It wasn't necessarily just about business. It was also about his side. What does he do? Understanding their family history, which is, also quite remarkable, being a local Emirati family. And then talking about all different aspects of life as well. So it kind of wasn't really positioned purely about business. It was kind of an overall conversation. And then to my surprise, the following day to get a call. But it kind of came out of the blue. And that's where I thought also, just to be natural, just to be kind of yourself in a situation, people can feel it.
So did you also discuss about your business and what you did and what you've done in the past versus and your family businesses? Did that come about in that conversation?
In the initial conversation, yes. It's a case of, so you're new to Dubai. Why did you move here? Then what are your plans? And where do you normally travel to? All those initial kind of conversations in terms of icebreakers, and then kind of moving in different directions. So yeah, I guess it was a case of just getting a feel for each other, and then to actually see, okay, does everything stack up in terms of then opening up in terms of circle? And in fact, it wasn't just the son of the founder of Enoch, but 4 or 5 very, very useful connections, very good friends of his that he opened up so kindly, and they're still friends and members of the club now as well. So.
Yeah, I love the fact that you emphasize on the word friend a lot in this whole thing, because you end up meeting great friends, and you make a lot of lifelong relationship, lifelong friendship with that. So business is business, of course, but then the friendship is also something that you value as a person. As Dave, as a person, it looks like you value friendship a lot.
Because sometimes if you have a question in your mind that you can't necessarily come to the final solution, if you have those good friends that you feel will be honest and transparent to you and they'll speak their mind, it's then always good as a sounding board to kind of bounce off ideas and take their feedback as well.
Yeah.
So, friendship is, super important to kind of have that foundation. And then business, as and how things open up, is kind of a little bit separate in that way.
Yeah, I want to talk about the initial conversation. In at any event, right? The first thing people generally ask when you meet someone new is like, "So, what do you do?"
Yeah.
Right. This is after you exchange your names and shake your hands and stuff like that. What do you do is the question, and there is this whole concept of the elevator pitch. And people practice and say that, what your elevator pitch should be in 30 seconds and all that stuff. Do you believe in that concept of elevator pitch?
I don't think it's necessary. So again, one of the very, very high profile members of the club, he's very understated in terms of the way he dresses, just very, very comfortable, very smart, but doesn't really try to show anything to anybody. And he's got several thousand employees across the world, let's say. And on his business card, he has the title window cleaner. And when he gave me his business card for the very first time, I was just like, did he give me your right card? And he's just like, it's always, a point of conversation. Because at the end of the day, yes, it's my company. But, everybody around me is equally as important as me. They all have a family. They all have responsibilities. And that was incredible to see. Sometimes the most prolific, high-scale businessmen here are the most humble as well.
Wow.
So again, having an elevator pitch or something to kind of raise the expectations as to what you can do is also potentially dangerous as well. Because if you overpromise and then when you're put in a room and you cannot deliver, then that's also something which you need to be mindful of.
Do you think if someone comes up with a rehearsed speech kind of introduction or something, people can see through that, can't they? I mean, people at that level, when they're dealing with hundreds of millions of dollars and thousands of employees across the world, they've seen the world.
They've dealt with countless people, and it's authenticity. It's a priceless skill. People can just get a feel for it if they feel that you're being honest and open and transparent. That's the most important thing. And what I've tended to find is the vast majority of people beyond a certain threshold, they're very, very humble, very, very straightforward. They're thankful for all their achievements, for all their blessings, but also willing to share some of their struggles, some of their hardships, what got them to the point of the journey where they are right now.
Yeah. And how does one move to that level? Because when we're talking about business, right, there are different levels of levels that we are at. Okay, now someone may be at that level of when the people who are at the Capital Club. Okay, they're at a different level than somebody who's meeting, let's say, a solopreneur meeting clients in a cafe, and they're at a different level. How does one move from here to here, moving from that the individual solopreneur at the beginning stage to the level of networking at Capital Club?
Well, I guess once you've got to a certain kind of position or threshold in terms of wealth, you have already some degree of comfort, let's say. I think that makes a big, big difference. When you're starting up, it's not necessarily easy. When you hear Richard Branson's story, or so many of the successful businesses or businessmen who have started from zero, those early years were very, very critical. It took a lot of hot blood, sweat and tears to get to where they were. Beyond a certain point, I think life becomes a lot more comfortable. You can take your time, you can delegate, There are so many benefits you can have from being in a position of wealth in terms of having the right people around you to also make decisions on your behalf. So all those factors are kind of important. But also what I tend to find is with some of the most successful people who I meet here, they value money as energy rather than just necessarily, okay, this is X amount that I have in my bank account. And it's not necessarily that they need to keep on having 5, 10, 15 million extra in their bank account. It's more the fact that they enjoy the business environment. They enjoy the hunger. They enjoy the fact that they're contributing, they're feeding, tens of families, let's say, all those different aspects as to what building a good business, a strong business allows for them to do. Even from the philanthropy side as well. A lot of the successful people really get a lot of pleasure from giving back also.
Yeah. What are they looking for? Like the people who have, let's say, in the materialistic sense of the world, like they have it all, and then they can give. What are they looking for?
I think peace of mind and satisfaction.
Yeah.
Those are the most important things in life. Like, the more you keep on striving to grow, it can also result in more tension, more frustration, more stress. It's just, I guess, finding that balance between setting realistic objectives, maybe pushing a little bit harder, but at the same time also enjoying, day-to-day kind of quality of life.
So for someone who's at the beginning of their business career, right? How can they, I'm thinking from like, how can they approach the high net worth individuals and the potential investors, right? When someone like at the starting level is dealing with someone who's a potential investor, what should they, what should their approach be? How should they treat?
So it really, really depends, because what you tend to find is a lot of the very high-profile names, the big families here, to actually approach that individual directly is very, very, very difficult. There are several gatekeepers around them, similar to how I mentioned before in terms of some of the automotive sector, different companies. There is a process to follow. You need to make sure that the team around is satisfied before it then escalates to the next level. And so, it's always important to kind of find people. And what I tend to find is a lot of people who are starting new businesses, ideally, best case scenario is not just to find somebody who can invest in your company, in your idea, but then also to add value in terms of their life experiences, their own personal connections, which can be far more valuable than just the money alone.
Absolutely, yeah. So there are like when people are looking for investment, they're looking for money investment, and they're also looking for mentorship and then guidance.
Strategic investment is always the best option, if at all possible.
Right.
Because again, if those investors have had experience of multiple different types of businesses, perhaps they've been through multiple failures as well, obviously they can add value. And everybody also has their own network. If they're part of the journey in terms of the potential growth of that company, then why wouldn't they necessarily open their network to also speed up the process?
Yeah. And if they see potential in you to grow, they'll want to be part of that.
No, exactly. And there's a lot of people out here in terms of private investors who are looking for good opportunities. Good opportunities are hard to find. Generally speaking, you've got so many people who are looking to raise capital. But one is the idea, the concept, what you have in mind in terms of the business. Another is, in terms of the cash flow planning, what's going to be the burn rate. All those different factors are important. And also in terms of the mindset of the founders. Like, do you have alignment? Have they potentially exited in the past? There are so many different factors involved in terms of the investment decision that, it's kind of like a process in a way.
Yeah. And so Capital Club helps in connecting the dots in that way then? So if someone is looking for investment, looking for an investor, does Capital Club help in finding the right investment?
So we have a lot of round table events for different investment kind of opportunities, whether it be for career-specific opportunities, whatever it may be. So there is a lot of focus of what's happening within the investment landscape. Now, beyond those conversations and discussions, which are very useful for people who are looking to establish their startups or grow their startups, is also to potentially network with possible investors also. So it's kind of two sides of the coin. But again, you need to develop your own rapport. They need to believe in you as a founder. They need to believe in what is the opportunity at hand. One other mistake I tend to find is a lot of the people who have a great eureka moment, a great idea or concept, they immediately think that there's an abundance of dry powder here in terms of the institutional investors. But again, what I tend to find is there is a process route to follow on that side. You need a certain number of friends and family investors or private investors to come in before you even think of approaching the institutional investors. Because again, they want to see that you've already started the process, that there has been appetite from third parties as well.
Wow, this is extremely important. I want to kind of summarize that. What you're saying is, so someone who's looking, that they have an idea and they're looking for someone to invest in their idea. Before they go out and look for the professional, the angel investors, they should have someone else invest in their business to prove some kind of a track record that yes, this is an investable business.
Yeah, I mean, if they've raised, whether depending on the type of business, $100,000, $500,000, whatever it may have been in terms of inward initial investment, having some angel investors on board or some friends and family investment, that allows for, number one, running the business to start growing the business, but then also showing track record that you have attracted investors. And then you can slowly scale up step by step. And a lot of the big institutional investors, I mean, it depends on their appetite. Some prefer to go seed, some prefer to go Series A, Series B. Some are industry agnostic, some prefer specific industries and sectors. So it's really doing your homework, because if you are only focused on one startup and you approach it the wrong way, it's very hard to knock that door again.
True.
So it's really just understanding the dynamics of each and every kind of investment entity that you're approaching.
Dave, you've dealt with a lot of businesses, you've had a lot of experience, and you're dealing with a lot of people now, like who are, you've seen both sides of the coin. What's your number one advice for people, like as a conclusion, if you want to advise people who are just getting started in their business and want to grow, what's your number one advice for them in terms of business networking?
It's very important to stay positive, because the journey is never easy. It's always going to be bumps in the road. So be prepared for that. That's number one. And number two, it's always good, as much as you're positive, to try and look for what are the potential flaws. What are the potential weaknesses? Could there be other competitors in the marketplace? Am I priced correctly? Like, what could be the stumbling blocks moving forward? That way you've got a rational kind of view of both sides of the equation, because you need to be prepared for all eventualities. So it's really kind of going with an open mind and just to try and think as rationally as possible, because, there's no guarantee that any startup will necessarily succeed. There could be any, political impact across the world, or a global financial kind of meltdown. But there could be so many factors that can affect the way your business ends up kind of operating. Or you may suddenly hit, great success and achievement in terms of bringing in the right investors, and it scales up very, very quickly. You never 100% know. But it's just be as best prepared for all eventualities and go with your eyes wide open. And how people who are watching this, who want to join the or apply to join the Capital Club, what's the best way to reach out to you or to the Capital Club? So the easiest is actually to go through the website. You get more of a feel as to how the club operates, what are the core values, the different committees that we have within the club, the leadership team, the board of directors, etc. So it's very good from an information perspective. Then you can actually apply through the website
and
send an email, capitalclubdubai.com. Or you can send an email, which is then listed on the website, or call. Even better, if you know of an existing member, is then to ask for their recommendation. So all those different avenues are possible. And then it's just following the normal process.
Got it. And we'll include the link to the website in the show notes and in the description for YouTube. Dave, as we conclude here, one final question. You've done a lot of interviews. You've been on a lot of podcasts.
Thank you.
How was your experience being on the Be Your Own Boss podcast?
Oh, it's been very good. So many interesting questions, so many things to discuss, and that. I think, unlike anywhere else in the world, there's so much energy and vibrance here in the UAE. It really is a great place, and it really kind of expands your mind so much further than anywhere else.
Yeah.
And I think, it's very good to always absorb information. When I've got free time, then I'm often watching different recordings and podcasts just to kind of broaden my understanding of different sectors. So, I find it's always very useful. So again, a lot of questions that have kind of been great to give my inputs on.
Thank you so much. And it was a wonderful conversation. I thoroughly enjoyed and loved. I learned so much in this conversation. So Dave, thank you so much for coming on the Be Your Own Boss podcast and sharing yourself.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, that was Dave Chaggar, the sales director at Capital Club Dubai, and you've been watching and listening to Be Your Own Boss.